Why did no one speak when she walked into the briefing room that morning? Why did conversations fade, not in disrespect, but in uncertainty, like people sensed something coming long before it arrived? Captain Emma Walker felt the silence before she saw the faces. Her boots clicked softly against the concrete floor as she entered, the smell of burnt coffee and dry dust mixing with the heavy tension in the air. Officers stood at the front. Medics clustered near the rear, and every eye seemed to shift away the moment she stepped inside. She paused only a heartbeat, enough to notice the unease but not enough to let it break her stride. Emma wasn't someone who demanded attention. She wasn't loud or forceful or the kind who stomped into a room with authority dripping from her uniform. She walked the way she moved in a trauma bay, calm, measured, present. Yet today, that calm seemed to ripple through the room like a warning. She took a seat beside senior nurse Karen Holt, who leaned slightly toward her, lowering her voice. "You feel it, too." Emma nodded once. Karen sighed, adjusting her glasses. Something shifting on this base, and not in a good way. Before Emma could reply, the tent flap snapped open, the air pressure shifting as Major General Victor Kincaid strode in. His presence hit like a shockwave, chest full of ribbons, chin lifted, eyes sharp with a kind of hardness that wasn't leadership but domination. He didn't greet anyone, didn't offer a nod, didn't pretend to acknowledge the human beings in front of him. He just walked straight to the podium, slapped a folder on the table and clicked a remote. The screen behind him flashed with charts and slides. "Effective immediately," he said, voice clipped. "The triage protocol at Forward Operating Base Meridian will undergo restructuring. During medical resource shortages, priority will be assigned based on mission-critical relevance." Emma's fingers tightened on her pen. Mission-critical relevance. Everyone knew what that meant. Rank first. Influence next. Lives somewhere down the line. Kincaid continued without looking up. High-ranking personnel and key operational roles will take treatment priority. Support personnel, non-essential staff, and local civilians will be treated as capacity allows. The room went still. A few officers straightened, as if this proclamation restored some imagined order. Several medics stiffened. A young nurse's breath caught just barely, but Emma heard it. She waited until the general finished speaking, waited until the last slide clicked away, waited until he said, "Questions." Her chair scraped the floor as she rose. Every head swiveled. Karen exhaled. A few officers shifted uncomfortably. "Sir," Emma said, voice steady, "medical triage cannot be based on rank. It must be based on survivability and urgency. Anything else violates ethics, international law, and every standard of battlefield medicine we abide by." The air changed. A sharp crackle of disbelief swept across the room. No one challenged a general openly, much less a medic captain. Kincaid lifted his eyes slowly, as though he were surprised anyone dared speak to him at all. "Captain Walker," he said, "decisions at this level are above your scope." Emma's heart knocked quietly against her ribs, but her voice never trembled. "Decisions that determine who lives and who dies are precisely within my scope, sir." A murmur rolled through the tent. For the first time, anger flickered in Kincaid's expression, a heat beneath the polished surface. "You will follow the protocol as written." "With respect," Emma replied, "I will follow the medical oath I swore." It should have ended there, with tension, with silence, with a cold stare across a room that no longer breathed. But as Emma sat down, she felt something shift, not around her, but inside her. A small, steady click, like a door unlocking. She didn't know it yet, but that moment would begin everything that came after. And everyone in the room sensed it too. Not fear. Not defiance. Something quieter. Something heavier. A woman drawing a line she would never step back from. Morning rolled across the base like fine sand, dry, hot, relentless. Helicopters thumped in and out of the landing zone, stirring dust devils through the already suffocating air. The sickly sweet scent of antiseptic clung to Emma's scrubs as she walked the hospital corridor, a battered metal mug of coffee cooling in her hand. Emma wasn't built like the other soldiers. Not physically imposing, not loud enough to command a room by presence alone. People often mistook her for a junior medic, or an assistant, or someone who had wandered into the wrong uniform by accident. She never corrected them. She just kept walking. Karen walked beside her now, flipping through a clipboard. He's tightening everything. Supplies, protocols, communication lines. This smells like control, not organization. Emma didn't look up from the charts she carried. Then we'll do what we always do. Karen glanced at her, and what's that? We'll save who we can, with what we have. A faint smile tugged Karen's mouth. You always make it sound simple. It is, Emma said quietly, when you shut out the noise. She could feel eyes on her as she walked, medics who whispered about the briefing, officers who whispered about her nerve, enlisted soldiers who whispered something else entirely. Respect. Curiosity. A question they didn't know how to ask. Who was she really? Sometimes Emma wondered the same. Not the uniform. Not the rank. Not the calm voice in chaos. The bracelet beneath her sleeve, woven, faded, nearly colorless from sweat and time, brushed against her skin as she moved. She touched it briefly, thumb tracing the worn threads. A promise. A memory she never spoke of. A night she tried not to relive. Karen noticed the gesture. You okay? Always, Emma said, but her voice dipped just slightly, revealing something she never admitted aloud. A pull inside her chest, a weight that never left. Before Karen could pry, the distant thump of boots echoed through the hall. A medic sprinted toward them. Captain, we've got a convoy accident near the motor pool, multiple wounds incoming. Emma didn't hesitate. She dropped her mug. It hit the floor with a metallic clang. Prep trauma bays, she ordered. Get vitals carts, burn kits, everything. But the medic hesitated, eyes widening. The advanced burn supplies are locked behind the new authorization protocol. Emma's jaw tightened, then unlock them. They said only command approval can release them now. A muscle ticked along her cheek. Then we move fast with what we have. And that was how it always began. Not with heroics. Not with speeches. With a choice. A quiet one. A heavy one. One that would ripple further than she could see. Minutes later, a stretcher burst through the trauma doors. A young private lay across it, half his uniform melted into his skin. His breaths were shallow, wet, broken. Emma moved instantly. Name. Reed, Private Alex Reed, 20 years old, a medic answered, voice shaking. Karen assessed the burns. Severe, 60% at least. We need advanced dressings, Emma said. They won't release them, the medic whispered. They threatened Martinez with court-martial if he bypassed command. Emma stared at the young soldier's blistered chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm. She could hear it, that subtle shift in breath right before a body gives up. Fine, she murmured, we improvise. And they did. Layer by layer. Burn by burn. Decision by decision. Reed's heart steadied hours later. He lived. But something inside Emma changed as she watched the empty doorway where those supplies should have come from. Not anger. Something colder. A clarity she wished she didn't need. What she didn't know, not yet, was that this was only the beginning. Something darker was coming. Something violent. Something that would push her to the edge of everything she believed in. And when it arrived, she would be standing in the center of it, calm, steady, unshakable, the quiet storm no one saw coming. Why did the convoy return in silence that afternoon? Why did soldiers who normally shouted orders and dragged stretchers with adrenaline in their veins move instead with a kind of haunted stillness? Emma sensed it before she heard the radio call. She was bent over a chart at the nurse's station when the door slammed open and a breathless corporal rushed in. Captain, civilians, multiple casualties, they're bringing a kid. A kid. The word hit like a cold ripple across the room. Emma dropped her pen. Prep Bay 2, Karen, you're with me. Boots thundered against concrete as they pushed into the hallway. Outside, the sound of engines crackled, vehicles limping through the gate with tires shredded and metal clinging to life. The convoy's lead truck screeched to a halt. Soldiers jumped out, shouting directions, waving medics forward. In the back of a bullet-pocked pickup truck under a blood-soaked tarp lay 3 civilians. And a child, no older than 7. Emma didn't hesitate. Bring him in, she said, already moving. Karen, airway kit. Someone get me vitals the moment he's on the table. The child's lips were blue, his breathing shallow, a shard of metal protruding from his ribs, glistening with blood that shouldn't have been on a child's shirt. His lashes trembled with each weak inhale. One of the soldiers followed close behind, voice cracking. Ma'am, please, he was caught in the crossfire. Emma didn't wait for details. She didn't need them. Let's get him stable, she said, hands already assessing, mind layering options. But before she could ask for the next instrument, the air shifted, again in that way she hated. The temperature dropping, the room tightening. Kincaid entered. Not with urgency. Not with concern. With command. What is this? He barked, eyes sweeping over the civilians, the wounded, the child. Karen kept her focus on the monitor. Civilian casualties from route skirmish, sir. They were brought in with the convoy. These supplies, Kincaid snapped, are for our personnel. Divert resources from them, treat our wounded first. Emma didn't look up. Sir, we have capacity. It is not your place to decide, he growled. Emma finally lifted her eyes. It wasn't defiance in her expression. It wasn't anger. It was something more dangerous. Conviction. Sir, she said, her voice level, when the patient is here, he becomes my responsibility. You will stand down. He is a child. He is not our mission. The nurses froze. Medics clung to instruments, unsure whether to keep working or step back. Emma's jaw tightened. My mission is life, sir. The silence that followed trembled. The child's monitor beeped weakly. Beep, beep, beep. Kincaid leaned forward. Captain Walker, you are disobeying a direct order. I'm treating a patient. You will stop now. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't break. It simply carved the truth into the air like a blade. No. One syllable. Soft. Unshaken. A wire stretched through the room. Then, miraculously, the child's chest rose a little stronger beneath her hands, as if he too refused to give in. Kincaid glared at Emma, jaw clenching so hard a vein pulsed along his temple. He turned sharply and stormed out, boots scraping against the tile like thrown anger. No one spoke until the door finished swinging behind him. Karen whispered, "You know this isn't over." Emma swallowed hard. It never is. The days that followed were strange. Not quiet, bases were never quiet. But changed. People walked differently, talked differently, watched her differently. Some officers stared at her with irritation, as if she'd complicated their world by refusing to bow to a rule that shouldn't have existed in the first place. Others observed her with cautious curiosity, like she had become something they didn't know how to categorize. But the enlisted. They stood a little straighter when she passed. Not as hero worship. Not as rebellion. As recognition. The kind that comes when someone defends you without needing applause. Emma didn't absorb any of it. She barely noticed it, truthfully. She moved the way she always had, clipboards tucked under her arm, hair tied back in that messy bun that refused to stay neat, boots worn smooth at the edges. But others noticed things about her she never intended to reveal. A medic spotted the scar behind her left ear when her hair shifted. A young nurse glimpsed her bracelet when her sleeve pulled back. A corpsman saw the way she popped open a stuck supply crate with a practiced movement that wasn't learned in medical school. Whispers followed. "Did you see that scar? I think she's been under fire before. That bracelet looks like something from a quick reaction team. Who is she really?" Emma ignored it, but Sergeant Major Harlan did not. He watched her from doorways, arms crossed, expression unreadable, not suspicion, not judgment. Calculation. The way a seasoned soldier examines terrain before choosing where to stand when the real fight comes. And it was coming. Everyone felt it. A storm building. Pressure rising. A shift in the air that made medics pause longer in hallways and soldiers glance at doors before walking through them. Kincaid felt it too. Every time he entered the hospital and saw heads lift toward Emma instead of him. Every time a medic hesitated before following one of his orders. Every time someone whispered her name in a tone he could not control. His authority wasn't being openly challenged. Worse, it was thinning. Quietly, naturally, as if the base itself recognized the difference between fear and respect. And he hated it. The blast came at sunset. A thunderous shock that shook the ground and slapped dust off every roof on the northern edge of the base. Emma didn't think, she didn't reason, she just ran. Karen was already sprinting beside her, hair whipping loose from its tie. "That was close," Karen said, breathless, "too close." 3 helicopters descended toward the landing zone, blades chopping air into storms of sand. Medics poured into the trauma bay, yanking gloves on, clearing tables, snapping carts into motion. Then the doors burst open. "Multiple casualties inbound," someone yelled. The first stretcher rolled in. Lieutenant Jacob Hale, barely conscious, uniform shredded, chest rising in painful, uneven breaths. Possible internal bleed. Abdominal trauma. Non-responsive. "Prep imaging," Emma ordered, "and get me O negative." Before she could finish the sentence, another stretcher crashed through the doors. Private Dylan Carter. 19. Shrapnel wounds. Collapsed lung. Better vitals. Better odds. Karen stepped close, voice strained. "Emma, we can't do both at once." Emma's mind moved like machinery. One could be saved. One was slipping fast. The call was clear. "Private Carter first," she said. And that was when the door slammed open like a thunderclap. Kincaid stormed in. "What is the situation?" Karen answered, "2 criticals, limited surgical." "The lieutenant goes first," he ordered. Emma didn't look up. "Sir, his chances are extremely low without stabilization. Carter can be saved right now." "I gave you an order, Captain Walker." Emma finally lifted her gaze. "Survivability," she said, "not rank, that's the rule." "You will obey me." "My oath does not change based on collar devices." The room froze. Medics, nurses, everyone. Even the heart monitors seemed to wait. Kincaid stepped forward, face inches from hers. "Disobey me again," he whispered, "and I will destroy your career." Emma stepped toward Private Carter's stretcher. "Prep him for surgery." The air shattered. Then, faint, broken, came a whisper from the lieutenant's stretcher. "She's right," Hale rasped. "Save him." Even dying, he understood. But Kincaid didn't. "Treat the lieutenant," he barked. Emma moved anyway. her hands on the private stretcher, her eyes forward, her voice steady. "Court-martial me if you need to," she said softly, "but he lives tonight." And in that moment, quiet, tense, explosive, the real story began. Not with blood, not with bullets, with a choice made by a woman who refused to bend, and a general who refused to lose control. Why didn't anyone breathe when he reached for the gun? Why did every medic freeze, every nurse flinch, every heartbeat in that trauma wing seem to stall? Because everyone knew what a man like him did when control slipped through his fingers. But no one, not even Emma, expected what came next. Kincaid's hand moved toward his holster so fast the air itself seemed to jolt. Karen gasped. A medic whispered, "No, no, no," under his breath. One of the corpsmen stumbled backward into a tray of instruments, sending metal clattering across the floor. And still, Emma didn't look away from the incision she was making in Private Carter's chest. Her hand stayed inside the wound, her voice steady, her breathing calm. "Clamp," she said softly. Karen passed it with trembling fingers. Then, bang! A gunshot tore into the ceiling, blasting tiles into dust. People screamed. The shockwave rattled the trays, rattled the glass, rattled the bones of everyone in that room. Except Emma. She did not flinch. Not even a blink. Not even a pause in motion. Her hands moved with the same surgical precision she used in calm moments, as if the shot were nothing more than another monitor beep. Another shot followed. Then another. And another. 5 in total. The room shook. But Emma stayed rooted. Her mind didn't race. Her pulse didn't spike. Something in her had gone still, stone still, the way it had years ago in a place she never talked about, on a night the bracelet on her wrist was tied by hands she never saw again. Inside her, a memory flickered. A collapsing building. Screams in the dust. Shrapnel cutting across her face. Her own hand stitching a wound by flashlight, while mortar shells cracked the walls around her. She had lived through worse than this. She had survived nights meant to break her. A gun fired above her head did not compare. She drew in one slow breath, suction. Karen blinked at her, stunned. "Emma, he fired a weapon." Carter's heart rate is dropping, focus. The monitors beeped wildly. Not from panic. From the dying private beneath her hands. And in that moment, the distinction was clear. Kincaid had tried to intimidate her. Instead, he had revealed himself, small, terrified, losing grip on the authority he worshipped. Emma remained what she always had been. Steady, grounded, unshakable. Behind them, the trauma bay doors burst open again, this time not with casualties, but with Sergeant Major Harland. He stopped cold. He saw the holes in the ceiling, the drifting dust, the terrified medics pressed against walls, the general with a smoking gun, and Emma, calm, focused, saving a boy's life as if nothing had happened. Harland's eyes widened just a fraction. Something like awe flashed in them. He walked forward slowly, not toward Emma, not toward Private Carter, but toward the general. "Get me a clipboard," he said. His tone wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. A medic scrambled to hand him one. Harland clicked a pen, flipped to a blank sheet and began writing. "Witness log initiated," he said. "Time 2043. Location Trauma Bay. Incident discharge of a weapon inside a medical facility." Every head snapped toward him. Kincaid stiffened. "Sergeant Major, you are." "No, sir," Harland interrupted calmly. "I am following regulation." The general's jaw twitched. Dust drifted down around them, catching the fluorescent lights like snow. And still Emma worked. Her hands moved with quiet precision. Her voice guided Karen with a calmness that shouldn't have been possible in a room filled with gun smoke and fear. "Epinephrine," she said. Karen snapped out of her shock. "Yes, yes, right." She passed it forward. Behind them, Captain Morrison from Base Legal arrived, MPs rushing behind him. One look at the ceiling, at the shell casings, at the gun still in Kincaid's hand. "General," Morrison said quietly, "put the weapon down." "I do not answer to you," Kincaid spat. "You do," Morrison replied, "when weapon safety is violated." Another silence. Tighter, sharper, more dangerous than the gunshots had been. Finally, after a long, rattled breath, Kincaid lowered the pistol. MP stepped forward, relieved him of it. And Emma still did not look up. She didn't need to. Her battlefield was the operating table. Her mission was the boy beneath her hands. Her fight was against death, not ego. While the base reeled from the shots fired, she saved Private Carter, stabilized him, closed the wound, restored the breath to his lungs, brought life back into the boy the general had tried to let die. By dawn, Carter was alive, and so was Lieutenant Hale. Both saved, not because of rank, not because of orders, because Emma Walker refused to break. Hours later, when the chaos settled into a kind of stunned quiet, Emma stepped out of the operating room with exhaustion pulling at her shoulders. The hallway was filled, not crowded with chaos, crowded with people. Medics, nurses, officers, enlisted soldiers. They didn't speak when she walked past. They didn't reach out or clap or offer thanks. They just straightened. Every last one of them. Like instinct. Like respect. Harland waited near the command office, jaw set, clipboard under his arm. Morrison stood beside him, arms folded. 2 MPs flanked the doorway. They watched Emma approach. Not as a captain. Not as a medic. But as something else entirely. A woman who had just drawn the line none of them had the courage to draw. When she reached the doorway, Harland spoke first. "Captain," he said quietly, "you're not walking in there alone." She looked at him. His eyes held no pity, no fear, just the calm resolve of a man who had buried too many good people to let another fall unjustly. Emma nodded once. Then she stepped inside, into the room where her fate and the general's would split apart forever. Colonel Patterson stood waiting. He wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't even on the base's chain of daily command. But he had arrived before sunrise. Boots dusty from travel. Uniform rumpled from urgency. He carried a thick folder, full of statements, reports, radio logs, partial recordings from terrified medics who had called in the moment the first shot hit the ceiling. He didn't sit. He didn't smile. "Major General Kincaid," he said, "explain what happened last night in that trauma bay." Kincaid squared his shoulders. "This is a disciplinary matter I was dealing with." "Enough," Patterson snapped. His voice echoed through the room. Then slowly, methodically, he opened the folder. "Private Martinez," he called. The young soldier entered, shaking but resolute. "Sir, I was ordered to deny supplies that Captain Walker requested for a critical burn patient." Patterson nodded. "Next." Nurses entered one by one, each describing the same thing. Orders ignored. Ethics violated. A gun fired to intimidate a medic. Medics followed, terrified voices recounting the shots. The chaos, the dust, the fear, and the calm woman who never flinched. Then Lieutenant Hale was wheeled in. Pale, weak, barely conscious. but his voice was steady when he whispered. She saved him. She saved both of us. Finally, Private Dylan Carter entered. Alive. Standing barely but standing. She didn't stop when he fired at the ceiling, he said, tears filling his eyes. I'm only here because she didn't stop. Silence flooded the room. Heavy. Final. Undeniable. Patterson turned to Emma. Captain Walker, he said quietly, you acted within medical authority, within ethical standards, and within military regulation. Then he faced Kincaid. Major General Victor Kincaid, he said, you are relieved of command, effective immediately. The general's face drained of color. MP stepped forward. Emma lowered her gaze, not triumphant, not vindictive, just tired. So very tired. But there was something in her eyes, too. Something quiet. Something steady. Something earned. Justice. And it was only beginning. Why did the base feel different the morning after the hearing? Not louder, not busier, just lighter, as if the air had finally remembered how to breathe. Word of Kincaid's removal traveled like heat through metal, not shouted, not celebrated, just shared in quiet murmurs that sounded almost like relief. Soldiers walked straighter, nurses spoke softer, medics moved with purpose instead of fear. And yet, Emma felt none of that lightness. She stood in the supply hallway, hands braced against a metal shelf, eyes closed for one fragile moment. The exhaustion she'd been holding back seeped into her bones, heavier than any rucksack she'd ever carried. Corinne found her there. You slept at all? Corinne asked. Emma opened her eyes. A couple hours. That's not sleep, Corinne muttered, crossing her arms. That's a nap stolen from the universe. Emma didn't argue. She was too tired, too wrung out, too stretched thin by the weight of what had happened. But tired or not, she had rounds to do, patients waiting, lives recovering, a hospital breathing again after weeks under pressure, and standing still had never been her way of coping. She pushed off the shelf. Let's go. As they walked, Corinne watched her closely. You didn't flinch when he fired that gun, not once. Emma didn't respond. She focused on the floor, on the rhythm of her steps, on the faint thump of helicopter blades somewhere outside. Corinne continued, voice quieter now. How did you stay so calm? Emma paused. It wasn't a question she wanted to answer, not because she didn't trust Corinne, but because some truths lived better in silence. She lifted her left wrist. The bracelet. The faded threads. The frayed knot. The memory woven into every fiber. It wasn't calm, Emma said softly. It was remembering. Corinne didn't ask for more. She didn't need to. She simply nodded once, acknowledging the weight without trying to carry it. They stepped into the recovery wing, just as Private Dylan Carter was attempting to sit upright against doctor's orders. He winced. Ma'am, Captain, sorry, just trying to. Emma placed a hand on his shoulder before he could finish. Lie back, slowly. He obeyed immediately, as if she'd issued a rank command instead of a medical one. His breathing steadied, though pain flickered across his face. You saved me, he said quietly. You saved yourself, Emma replied. I just helped. But Carter shook his head. No, ma'am, if you followed his order, if you'd hesitated, I. His voice cracked. Emma softened. Focus on getting stronger, the rest can wait. He nodded, eyes glossy. Yes, ma'am. As she checked his vitals, he studied her the way soldiers sometimes study the people who pulled them back from death, as if trying to understand how someone so quiet could hold that much determination. You weren't scared? He asked. She didn't answer with words. She just tucked her sleeve lower over her bracelet. Lieutenant Hale was next. He was awake now, pale but alert, supported by a pillow stack. When Emma stepped inside, he lifted his gaze with effort. Captain, he whispered. His voice had grown stronger since the hearing, but fragility still clung to every syllable. "You saved him," Hale said, nodding toward Carter's room. "You made the right choice." Emma set his chart on the table. "You made it too," she said. "You told us to save him." Hale exhaled, a shaky but proud breath. It was the only honorable call left. He paused, studying her. "I heard what he did," Hale said, "firing a weapon in a hospital at you." "At the ceiling," Emma corrected softly. "At you," Hale repeated. She said nothing. He swallowed. "You didn't flinch, not once." Emma adjusted his monitor leads. "Flinching doesn't help the patient. But risking your life does." Her hands froze for a moment, just a moment. Then she continued her work. Hale leaned back, eyes heavy but steady. "You honored the uniform more than he ever did." Emma didn't reply. She couldn't. Some compliments didn't feel like praise. They felt like truths she didn't want to carry. The new commander arrived 2 days later. General Thomas Avery walked into the medical wing without ceremony. No entourage, no barked orders, just calm footsteps and observant eyes that took in the rows of beds, the steady rhythm of monitors, the hum of a facility finally breathing again. Emma noticed the room shift, not the way it had when Kincaid walked through, with fear tightening every back, but the opposite. A quiet settling, a readiness to work, a presence that didn't suffocate but steadied. Avery addressed the staff with simple words. "Your decisions save lives. My job is to back you up." The medics straightened. Karen exhaled. Even Emma felt her shoulders loosen, just a little. From that moment, the base felt different. Not completely healed, wounds like the ones Kincaid left didn't vanish overnight, but steadier, fairer, safer. But outside all that recovery, all that relief, Emma found herself struggling with something she hadn't expected. Stillness. She felt it when she walked the hallway at night, when she washed her hands after a long shift, when she stood alone in the supply room with the hum of refrigerators filling the air. Her mind replayed the gunshots, not with fear, but with a strange, unsettling calm. She replayed the silence after, the dust falling like ash, the eyes watching her, the respect she never wanted but could no longer avoid. And beneath all of it, a memory she could no longer push aside. She saw her younger self in a ruined alley overseas, hands covered in blood, a teammate screaming for her to run, a wall crumbling as mortar fire shook the earth. The moment she tied a tourniquet into place, with fingers shaking so violently she couldn't feel them. The moment she realized staying calm wasn't bravery. It was survival. That was the night she got the bracelet. The night she earned it. The night she lost someone whose name she hadn't spoken since. So when Kincaid fired his gun, she didn't freeze. Because she had already lived through the worst night of her life and survived. But survival didn't come without consequences. That calm she held onto so fiercely. It cost her sleep, breath, peace. She stood there in the dim hallway, gripping the edge of a sink, breathing slowly until her heartbeat steadied. Karen's voice drifted from the doorway. "You okay?" Emma didn't turn, just tired. "Lieutenant Hale's family called. They want to talk to you when they arrive." Emma nodded, "Of course." "And Carter's mother sent a message," Karen continued. "She wants to thank you." Another nod. Emma's voice remained even. "It's enough that he's recovering." Karen hesitated. "Emma, you don't have to carry this alone." "I'm not," Emma said quietly. But they both knew she was. Later that night, Emma walked toward the trauma bay to check on inventory before lights out. The hallway felt different now, quieter, emptier, as if the ghosts of earlier chaos had settled into the walls. Halfway down the corridor, she saw someone waiting near the doors. Sergeant Major Harland. He wasn't standing guard. He wasn't writing notes. He was just waiting. When Emma approached, he straightened. "You walk like someone ready for a fight," he said. Emma stopped, "And you watch like someone expecting one." He gave a faint, knowing smile. "You did something most officers wouldn't," Harland said. "You stood your ground, even when every rule bent against you." She met his eyes. "Someone had to." "No," he corrected quietly. "Someone chose to, that's different." She didn't respond. Harland glanced toward the trauma bay. "Kincaid didn't fall because you defied him. He fell because you exposed what he really was." Emma inhaled. "That wasn't my intention." "Doesn't matter." Harland crossed his arms. "Truth doesn't care about intention, only outcome." She looked down at the bracelet on her wrist. Harland followed her gaze. "There's a story behind that," he said. "Everyone has a story," she replied. "Yes," Harland said, "but not everyone's story is still unfolding." His words hung in the quiet air. Then he stepped aside, making space for her to pass. "Rest while you can, Captain," he said. "Storms like him aren't the last you'll face." Emma walked past him into the trauma bay. She didn't look back. But she felt it. The truth in his warning. The weight in his tone. The certainty that this chapter wasn't the end of anything. It was only the beginning. Why did the nightmares return the moment the base became calm again? Why did her mind wait, patiently, almost cruelly, until everything around her settled before dragging her back into the places she fought so hard to climb out of? Emma hadn't slept more than an hour when the first dream hit. A collapsed building. Dust thick in her throat. Screams muffled under concrete. The weight of someone's blood soaking through her uniform. The bracelet being tied on her wrist by a trembling hand that wouldn't stop shaking. She woke gasping. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a small, sharp inhale that she swallowed before it escaped her. It was still dark outside. The base generators hummed. A distant helicopter thumped lazily through the night sky. Emma sat upright, rubbed her face, and forced her breath to slow. She couldn't afford to fall apart. Not here. Not now. And especially not when the people she saved were counting on her to stay steady. She got up, laced her boots, and stepped into the hallway as if the weight in her chest wasn't trying to pull her backward. Morning came with the same energy as always. Dusty air, hurried footsteps, faint echoes of orders drifting across the compound. But the hospital had changed. It wasn't fear in the air anymore. It was focus. Purpose. A quiet pride that slid into the cracks Kincaid had left behind. Emma stepped into the trauma bay and found two medics arguing gently over how to rearrange the equipment carts for better efficiency, something nobody would have dared attempt 2 weeks ago. She walked past them with a small nod, and both straightened instinctively. "Morning, ma'am." "Morning." She didn't stop to absorb the respect. She moved through it the way she moved through fog, barely aware it touched her. Karen caught up quickly. "You heard. Colonel Patterson wants a formal written statement from you by end of week." Emma sighed. "Of course he does." "You okay with that?" "Yes, a beat, no." Karen frowned. "Emma, I'm not afraid of telling the truth. I'm just tired of reliving it." Karen didn't push. She never did. Private Dylan Carter was improving. He stood by his bed, against instructions, trying to stretch his arms without reopening his stitches. Emma stepped inside. "You're supposed to be resting." He jumped, slightly caught. "Ma'am, I can't just stay still all day." "You almost died," she said. "You get to be still for a while." He lowered his gaze, sheepish. "Dead soldiers don't stretch, I guess." Emma rolled her eyes gently. "Lie down." He obeyed immediately. But before she could leave, Carter cleared his throat. "Ma'am, may I ask something?" Emma turned back. "Go ahead." "Why did you do it?" Silence. He wasn't asking about the surgery. Not about triage. Not about his lung collapse or the stitches, or even the shots fired overhead. He meant something deeper. Why did you risk everything for someone you barely knew? Why didn't you flinch when a man with stars on his collar tried to scare you? Why didn't you break? Emma's fingers moved to the bracelet on her wrist, brushing the thread she tried so hard to hide. "Because once," she said quietly, "someone saved me." Carter didn't know what to say. So he just nodded. "Thank you, ma'am." Emma left before he could see the memory flicker across her eyes. Lieutenant Hale's room was dimmer, quieter. He was still recovering, but his mind was sharper now, clearer. He smiled weakly when Emma walked in. "Captain, how's the pain?" "Manageable," he lied. Emma checked his IV line. "You're healing well, considering everything." Hale studied her a moment. "I've been thinking." "That's dangerous," Emma replied dryly. He chuckled, then winced. "Careful, laughing hurts more than shrapnel." Emma softened. "What's on your mind?" "You didn't have to do what you did," Hale said. "Most people in uniform follow the chain even when it's wrong, but you didn't." She didn't answer. "You didn't do it for me," Hale continued. "You did it for him." He nodded toward Carter's room. "For someone who didn't have rank or power or influence." Emma turned away, adjusting his vitals. "Rank means nothing when someone is dying." "That's not how everyone sees it." "But it's the only way I know." Hale watched her for a long moment. "You're different, Captain." "Different." Emma had heard that before, whispered in medic tents, in field hospitals, in places where bullets made people honest. But she didn't feel different. She felt tired. She felt haunted. She felt like she was balancing the weight of two worlds, the one she lived in now, and the one buried beneath memory and dust and rubble. She forced a small smile. "Get some rest, Lieutenant." "Captain." "Yes." "You saved him," Hale said softly, "and that saved me." Emma didn't linger. She stepped out before emotion could take root. General Avery found her near the pharmacy storage later that afternoon. He approached without the tension she was used to from high command. No clipped steps, no sharp posture, just steady, respectful presence. "Captain Walker." "Sir." "I've been reviewing your file." Emma stiffened. "Anything concerning?" "Two things," Avery said, lifting a brow. "One, your commendations are buried under layers of understatement." "That's intentional." "I suspected." "And two," Emma asked. Avery handed her a folder. "Your previous submitted a transfer recommendation before he retired. He thought you should be leading the entire clinical operations unit." Emma blinked. "That's not something I expected," she admitted. Avery nodded. "You've shown judgment under pressure most officers don't develop in a lifetime." She swallowed. "Sir, I'm good here with patients, with hands-on work." Avery studied her bracelet. "Some people run from their history, Captain. Others rise from it." Emma's jaw clenched. "I'm not running." "Good," Avery said softly, "because your story isn't finished, and the soldiers here still need you." He left her standing there, breath caught between the past she avoided and the future she didn't know how to carry. That evening, Emma stayed late, walking the halls after the lights dimmed. She checked on every patient, Carter sleeping soundly, Hale resting, a dozen others healing slowly. But when she reached the empty trauma bay, the same room where 5 gunshots had cracked the ceiling, the silence rolled over her like cold water. She walked to the center of the room, stopped beneath the patched bullet holes, looked up. In the quiet, she remembered the dust raining down, the smoke curling from the barrel, the panic frozen in every face. And her own hands, steady, unmoving, working as if death itself couldn't touch her. She exhaled slowly. That calm wasn't strength. It wasn't courage. It was memory. She closed her eyes. She could smell the burning metal of the mortar-struck building overseas. Feel the trembling hands tying the bracelet onto her wrist. Hear the voice that whispered, "Stay calm. You have to stay calm. I'll cover you." A voice she never heard again. She opened her eyes. The trauma bay was still, empty, safe. But the past never was. As she walked out, Sergeant Major Harland appeared at the end of the hall, leaning casually against the wall. "You look like someone carrying more weight than her frame should allow," he said. Emma paused. "I'm fine." Harland gave a slow, knowing nod. "You're good at saving others, Captain. Terrible at letting anyone save you." She didn't respond. He stepped closer. "Storm's not over," he said quietly. "It's just the eye." Emma met his gaze. "Calm. Steady. Ready." "I know," she said. Then she turned and walked away. A lone figure in dim light. Carrying scars the world would never see. And strength she never claimed. But the storm was watching her. Waiting. Because heroes weren't built in peace. They were built in the moments after. Why did the base alarm sound so strangely that night? Not urgent, not frantic, just a single, sharp tone that echoed through the quiet halls like a warning meant for only one person. Emma stopped mid-step, one hand on a stack of charts, the other brushing the bracelet hidden beneath her sleeve. The clock on the wall read 2:07. Most of the hospital slept. Lights dimmed. Machines hummed softly. Then the tone came again, short, clipped, not the typical emergency alert. Corinne poked her head out from the on-call room, hair a mess, glasses crooked. "What was that?" "No idea," Emma said softly. The third tone echoed down the hallway. Emma felt something shift inside. Instinct, memory, a familiar tightening in her chest. The kind that didn't come from danger itself, but from the moment right before danger arrived. Within minutes, a corporal sprinted toward them. "Captain, Sergeant Major Harland needs you in command office too, right now." Emma exchanged a glance with Corinne. "Go," Corinne urged. "I'll cover the bay." Emma nodded and headed into the dim hallway, boots whispering against the concrete. The command wing felt colder than the rest of the base, as if the AC worked harder here, or maybe the walls themselves held remnants of the tension that had lived here under Kincaid's rule. Harland waited outside room 2, clipboard tucked under his arm as always. He nodded to her. "Captain." "What's going on?" Emma asked. His expression didn't change, but something tightened behind his eyes. "Just stay calm," he said. Emma's breath hitched barely, but enough for him to notice. "Is someone hurt?" "No," a pause, "but someone is lying." He pushed the door open. Inside sat Colonel Patterson, General Avery, Captain Morrison from Legal, and two officers Emma didn't recognize, military intelligence patches on their sleeves. The moment she stepped in, their eyes snapped to her. Analyzing. Measuring. Judging. Harland motioned to a chair. She sat. Patterson slid a folder toward her. "Captain Walker, we need your account of all events leading up to the shooting." Emma blinked. "I already submitted my preliminary statement." "Now we need the full one," Morrison said. "Kincaid is contesting the investigation." Emma tensed. "On what grounds?" One of the intelligence officers spoke for the first time. "He claims you provoked him." The room chilled. Provoked him. A man with stars on his collar. A man who fired a gun in a hospital. Claiming she provoked him. Emma's shock didn't show on her face. She had learned long ago stillness was armor. Harland watched her carefully, ready to intervene if needed. Avery folded his hands. He has also implied your past deployments compromised your judgment. Emma stiffened just slightly, but Avery caught it. The intelligence officer continued. He referenced a prior incident on your record, the collapse structure during your early medic years, mentioned emotional trauma, possible unresolved PTSD. The bracelet on her wrist suddenly felt too tight. Emma inhaled once through her nose. Calm. Always calm. I never lost control, Emma said quietly. We know, Avery replied. We are not questioning that. But the investigation requires full transparency, Morrison added. So we'll need you to recount not only the night of the shooting, but your prior incident as well. Emma's throat tightened. Not from shame, not from fear, but from the weight of a memory she kept sealed for years, one she never allowed to surface because when it did, it swallowed her whole. Harland stepped forward. Colonel, with respect, Captain Walker's past trauma is irrelevant to the general's misconduct. One of the intelligence officers shot back. Everything is relevant when stars are involved. Emma closed her eyes for a moment. This wasn't about her trauma. This was about them trying to save a man who nearly killed 2 soldiers by stopping her from doing her job. She straightened. You want the truth? Patterson nodded. Emma met each of their eyes, steady and unblinking. Then I'll give you the truth. The room disappeared around her. The table, the officers, the dull fluorescent lights, fading into the memory she had avoided even in her dreams. The building collapsed during a nighttime extraction, she began. We were helping evacuate civilians after a mortar strike. The intelligence officers leaned forward. Our team split, she continued. 3 went to secure the exit route. I stayed behind with 2 wounded soldiers. One was bleeding out fast. The other was pinned under debris. She paused, swallowing hard. I was 19. Her voice remained steady, but Harland could see the subtle tension in her jaw. I did what I was trained to do, she said. Stopped the bleeding, kept pressure, stayed calm, but then the second mortar hit. Her eyes lowered, just for a moment. The room caved in. My teammate, Santos, covered me with his body. He took the brunt of the hit. The memory hit her like wind. Dust. Silence. Then a scream. Not hers. His. Santos was trapped. I tried to pull him free. He told me to go, told me I had to stay calm or we'd both die. Her fingers touched the bracelet unconsciously. He tied this on my wrist, she whispered. Avery's expression softened. He told me to run, I didn't. The intelligence officer frowned. But your record says you escaped the collapse. I dragged him out, she said. I carried him until I couldn't feel my arms. He died 2 hours later. Silence swallowed the room. Not cold. Not questioning. Just human. Emma finished quietly. That was the day I learned panic kills faster than bullets. No one spoke for several seconds. Even the officers trained to interrogate didn't interrupt. Finally, Patterson cleared his throat. Captain, you showed more restraint under fire than any officer I've ever met. The intelligence officers exchanged a glance, the accusation dissolving from their eyes. Avery leaned forward. Your past doesn't discredit you, it defines your strength. Harland placed a hand on the table, and it explains why she didn't flinch when that man fired his gun. Emma exhaled slowly. Her voice returned to its calm, steady rhythm. What else do you need from me? Morrison closed the folder. Nothing. The investigation will reflect the truth. Harland opened the door for her. You're done here, Captain. Emma stepped out into the hallway, breath shaking only once, silently, privately, held deep in her chest where no one else could hear it. By dawn, the rumors had already started. Not the harmful ones. Not the poisonous ones Kincaid once spread. These were different. She dragged a man out of a collapsing building when she was 19. She never flinched under fire because she learned to survive hell. No wonder she stood up to a general. She's more soldier than half the base. Emma walked through the murmurs without acknowledging a single one. Respect was never her goal. Survival was. And saving lives, every day, every shift, every decision, was the only mission she accepted. But as she walked the hallway, Harlan caught up to her. "You holding up?" he asked. Emma inhaled, managing. "That's not what I asked." She paused, then looked him in the eyes, something she rarely did. "It's harder to talk about the past than it is to live through it." Harlan nodded slowly. "That's how you know it mattered." She didn't answer. He continued, voice lower. "They won't question you again. Your past isn't a weakness. It's why soldiers trust you without hesitation." Emma didn't respond. She just looked toward the trauma bay. Lights off. Silent. Still. Safe for now. Harlan followed her gaze, storms moving again. Emma tightened her grip on the bracelet. "I know." And she stepped forward. Toward her patients. Toward her duty. Toward whatever waited next. Because calm wasn't her gift. Calm was her weapon. Why did the quiet hours before dawn always feel the most dangerous? Not loud, not chaotic, just too still, too fragile, like the thin layer of calm stretched over something waiting to break. Emma felt it the moment she stepped outside the hospital for a breath of cold air. The sky was dark blue, almost black at the horizon, and the desert wind carried a chill that scraped at the back of her neck. She crossed her arms, staring toward the far perimeter lights. Something tugged at her chest, a subtle warning. Not fear, not anxiety, more like instinct stirring awake. Footsteps approached behind her. "You're out early," Harlan said quietly. Emma didn't turn, couldn't sleep. He came to stand beside her. "I heard about last night, the interrogation." "It wasn't an interrogation." "Yes," Harlan said, "it was." Emma exhaled slowly, watching the breath fog in the cold air. "It's over." "No," Harlan corrected, "it's paused." She shifted her weight. "Why do you think something else is coming?" "Because," Harlan said, "men who build entire careers on intimidation don't accept consequences quietly." Emma's jaw tightened. Kincaid gone. Harlan didn't look convinced. He may be gone from his chair, but he's not done trying to rewrite his story. Emma turned toward him now. "What aren't you telling me?" Harlan studied her face, the way someone studies a soldier deciding whether they're ready for another truth. "Kincaid filed a secondary complaint," Harlan said, "an unofficial one, directed at you." Emma felt her stomach drop. "What kind of complaint?" "That you disobeyed multiple verbal orders, endangered the operation, acted emotionally compromised." Emma's breath caught, not in fear, but in disbelief so sharp it almost numbed her. "That's not true," she said. "I know," Harlan replied, "but he's trying to create a record, something the military machine can latch onto if someone higher up chooses to entertain it." Emma swallowed. "Does anyone believe him?" Harlan hesitated for the first time. Avery appeared in the doorway behind them. "Some do," the general said. Emma turned fully. "Sir." Avery stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. "Most don't. Most see you clearly. But a few of his old allies are stirring. They're pushing for a deeper inquiry." Emma felt an old, familiar heaviness press against her ribs. The same heaviness she felt after the building collapse years ago, when guilt and duty sat together like unwelcome companions. "I don't understand," she said softly. "I did my job." Avery's expression softened. "You did more than your job, and some people fear what they can't control." Emma looked back toward the desert horizon as the sky began to lighten. She didn't feel anger. She felt tired. Avery spoke again, quieter now. "Walk with me, both of you." They walked along the outer perimeter road as the sun crept up, painting faint streaks of gold across the sand. The base was waking, slow, deliberate. Avery kept his pace measured. "Captain Walker," he began, "I need you to understand something. This isn't about medical decisions. It's about power. Kincaid believes he's owed loyalty, and your refusal to back down embarrassed him." "I didn't refuse to back down," Emma said. "I refused to let a man die." "Exactly," Avery said. "And people like him don't forgive defiance, especially defiance done in front of a crowd." Emma brushed her thumb over her bracelet again. "What happens now?" Harland answered. "Another review board, possibly an external audit." Emma stopped walking. "A psych evaluation," she said quietly. Avery didn't sugarcoat it. "It's possible." Emma closed her eyes for a moment. This wasn't fear. This wasn't weakness. This was exhaustion, the kind that burrows deep after years of carrying weight no one else can see. Harland spoke softly. "If they pull you in, tell the truth. Your record speaks for itself." Emma nodded without opening her eyes. "I always tell the truth," she whispered. By midday, the hospital flooded with movement again. Nurses swapping shifts, medics prepping trauma kits, the routine of a base that never truly rested. Emma forced herself back into work. Routine kept her grounded. Patience kept her steady. Carter grinned when she entered his room. "Ma'am, look," he flexed his fingers gently. "My right arm isn't shaking anymore." "That's good," Emma said, "but don't overdo it." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You look tired, Captain, like you fought a dragon in your sleep." Emma gave a tiny smile, something like that. "Whatever it is," Carter whispered, "don't let it get to you. You saved me. You saved Hale. People saw what happened. The truth wins." Emma nodded, but part of her wondered if truth actually won, or if it simply survived long enough to be buried under paperwork. When she stepped into Hale's room, he was sitting up straighter, flipping through some papers. "You're working?" Emma asked. "Trying," he said. "Command wants my full statement by tonight." Emma froze. "They asked you?" she asked quietly. Hale nodded, and I told them exactly what happened. She waited. "I told them you acted with more clarity than the man giving orders," Hale said. "And I told them he put us all at risk." Emma's shoulders loosened only slightly. "Thank you." Hale shook his head. "Don't thank me, thank yourself. You kept me alive when I wanted to give up." Emotion pricked her throat, but she pushed it down. "Get some rest," she said gently. He saluted her weakly. She returned it barely before slipping out. That night, as the generators hummed and the base lights flickered softly across the courtyard, Emma sat alone in the medical storage room, elbows on her knees, head in her hands. The weight she'd held for years pressed harder now. Not because she couldn't carry it, but because she was tired of carrying it alone. The door creaked. Karen stepped in, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You didn't show up for dinner," Karen said. "So I assumed you were doing your brooding medic statue routine again." Emma didn't look up, but a small smile tugged at her mouth. "I'm fine." "You're awake at midnight in a storage room staring at your boots. That's not fine." Emma exhaled. "They might evaluate me." Karen nodded slowly. "I heard." Emma rubbed her face, frustrated. "Do you think I'm unstable?" Karen snorted. "You, Emma, I once saw you reset a dislocated shoulder with a broken wrist and then finish triage without flinching. You're the most stable human on this base." Emma lifted her gaze. "It's not about what's true, it's about what they can twist." Karen sat beside her. "Listen to me. You didn't do anything wrong, And if they drag you into a room and try to dig through your past, then let them. You don't owe them shame. You owe them honesty. Emma bowed her head. Corinne added softly, and you're not alone, not anymore. Emma swallowed hard. It was strange how the smallest kindness could feel heavier than any accusation. Near dawn, Emma decided to walk the base again, needed the air, needed the dark sky to settle her breathing. But halfway across the courtyard, a voice cut through the silence. Captain Walker. She turned. General Avery approached, a file in his hand. He stopped in front of her. The board reviewed Hale's statement, he said, and Carter, and Harland. Emma's pulse slowed. Avery extended the file. Kincaid's claims are dismissed. Emma stared at him. Avery nodded. You're cleared. It should have felt like relief. But what Emma felt instead was stillness. Like the moment after a storm passes, quiet but not peaceful. Calm but only on the surface. As if something else waited behind the horizon. Avery studied her expression. You're not celebrating. Emma shook her head. No. Why not? She looked down at her bracelet. Because storms don't end, she said softly. They just move. Avery exhaled. Get some rest, Captain. Emma nodded once and walked away, shoulders straight, breath steady, steps quiet. Because she knew something now. Kincaid was done. But her story was. Her tests weren't. Her history wasn't finished with her. And tomorrow would come with something else. A new weight. A new battle. A new storm. Yet she kept walking. Because calm was her shield. Steadiness was her promise. And saving others was the only truth she trusted. Why did the sunrise feel heavier than the night that came before it? Why did the light itself seem to hesitate, as if unsure whether it was welcome on a base still learning how to breathe again? Emma stood beside the hospital entrance, watching the horizon turn from deep purple to muted gold. The desert wind brushed against her face, carrying the scent of dust and the faint hum of generators. She wrapped her arms around herself, not out of cold, but out of the strange weight sitting beneath her ribs. The board had cleared her. Kincaid's allies had retreated. Truth had spoken louder than rank. It should have ended there. But storms never truly end. They fade, they shift, they wait. And Emma knew it. She heard footsteps behind her, slow, familiar, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Harland came to stand beside her. Thought I'd find you out here, he said. Emma didn't look away from the sunrise. I couldn't sleep. You rarely do. A faint smile tugged at her mouth. You notice too much. It's my job, Harland said. They watched the sky brighten. A convoy rolled past the far gates. A medic jogged toward the gym. Normalcy tried to return piece by piece. Harland spoke quietly. You won. Emma shook her head. No, I survived. Harland tilted his head. You think there's a difference? Yes, she said softly. Survival doesn't feel like winning. He studied her profile, the exhaustion etched beneath her eyes, the determination stitched into her posture, the quiet pain she carried like a second uniform layer. You're too hard on yourself, Harland murmured. I have to be. Why? She hesitated. Then her fingers drifted to the bracelet, worn, frayed, holding pieces of a past she refused to let define her, yet never let go of. Because I owe it to someone who didn't get the chance to be hard on themselves, she whispered. Harland didn't press. He didn't need to. Emma returned inside as the hospital began to wake. She checked on Carter, still sleeping, curled slightly to protect the healing wound. She checked on Lieutenant Hale, awake, sipping water, determination flickering in his tired eyes. Captain, Hale said, voice steadier than before. How are you feeling? Better, he said, Thanks to you. Emma adjusted his IV. Thanks to the team, we all played a part. Hale shook his head. No, it was you. I saw everything, the way you stood there, the way you didn't break. He swallowed. You saved us, not just our bodies, our dignity. Emma kept her hands moving, even as emotion quietly tugged at her chest. Rest, she said softly. You've earned it. Before leaving, Hale added, they trust you here, more than any leader we've had in a long time. Emma didn't respond. She couldn't. Because trust wasn't something she sought, it was something she feared. Trust meant expectation. Expectation meant weight, and she already carried too much. Later that afternoon, General Avery summoned her to his office. When she entered, he stood by the window, arms crossed. Captain Walker, he said, you've had a challenging few weeks. That's one way to put it, sir. Avery gave a faint smile. Your composure under pressure was exceptional. Your decisions saved lives, and your integrity exposed failures in the command chain. Emma braced herself. Compliments often came right before another burden. Avery turned to face her fully. I'd like to formally recommend you for division-level leadership in medical operations. Emma's breath caught. Sir, I don't want command. Avery stepped closer. Why not? Emma looked down at her hands, the steady hands that never shook during triage, never hesitated under fire, never betrayed the fear she swallowed whole. Because leadership isn't about medals or titles, she said. It's about carrying others, their failures, their trauma, their expectations, and I already carry enough ghosts. Avery nodded slowly. You think leadership means being alone? Isn't it? She asked. Not when it's done right. Emma didn't answer. Avery placed a file on the desk. You don't have to decide now. The offer stands. But understand something, the people here follow you already, with or without rank. Emma exhaled, long and quiet. Thank you, sir, she said softly. But for now, I just want to do my job. Then do it well, Avery said, and let the future come when it's ready. She nodded and stepped out. But the weight of the offer lingered behind her ribs, uncomfortable, uninvited, but undeniably real. That evening, after the last shift change, after the monitors quieted and the base settled into nighttime routine, Emma wandered to the very place she had avoided for days. The trauma bay. Empty now, clean, restored. She walked toward the center of the room, beneath the patched bullet holes where dust once rained onto her hair and shoulders. For the first time since the shooting, she allowed herself to feel it fully, the moment she had stood between chaos and duty, the fear she didn't show, the calm she forced, the memory she locked inside. She closed her eyes. The sound of gunfire echoed in her mind. Then the sound of mortar explosions years earlier. Then the voice. Stay calm, you have to stay calm. I'll cover you. She felt the weight of a dying soldier's arm across her shoulders. The bracelet tying onto her wrist. The moment that shaped her into the medic she became. She opened her eyes. The trauma bay was silent again, empty, safe. But safety wasn't what she felt. She felt something else. Resolve. Quiet, unshakable resolve. She understood now. Kincaid wasn't her enemy. Her past wasn't her enemy. The nightmares weren't her enemy. Her real enemy was the belief that she had to face everything alone. Footsteps echoed in the doorway. Karen leaned against the frame. I figured you'd be hiding in here. Emma smiled faintly. I'm not hiding. No, Karen said, you're remembering. Emma didn't deny it. Karen stepped closer, voice soft. You know, no matter what Kincaid said, no matter what the boards think, strength doesn't mean silence. You don't always have to be the calmest person in the room. Emma ran her fingers over the edge of a supply cart. Calm is all I have. No, Karen whispered. It's what you used to survive, not what you need to live. Emma stared at her, then looked at the bracelet, then finally, lifted it into the light. Corinne's eyes softened. Who gave you that? Emma hesitated, then spoke a name she hadn't said in years. Santos. Corinne waited patient. He saved my life, Emma said. I couldn't save his. Corinne placed a hand on Emma's forearm. You've saved more people than you'll ever allow yourself to count. Emma blinked back something sharp. It still doesn't feel like enough. It never will, Corinne said, and that's why you're exactly who you're meant to be. Emma inhaled deeply. The air tasted different. Less like dust. More like release. Hours later, when the base was quiet, Emma stepped outside again. The night sky shimmered with stars. She walked toward the perimeter fence, feeling the cold metal beneath her hand, feeling the wind brush across her face, feeling her breath steady, not forced, not controlled, but naturally falling into rhythm. Footsteps approached softly behind her. Harland again. You look lighter, he said. Emma didn't turn. Maybe I am. Good, he said, because the world needs medics who carry light, not weight. She smiled, small, tired, but real. Storms passed, Harland added. For now, Emma said. Yes, Harland agreed, for now. They stood together in silence. Finally, Emma whispered, Santos once told me calm isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to keep moving anyway. Harland nodded, wise man. He was, Emma said softly, and I think he'd want me to keep moving. Her hand closed gently over the bracelet. Without his ghost holding me back. Harland said nothing. He didn't need to. Emma looked toward the stars, toward the edge of the base, toward the vastness stretching beyond the fences, uncertain, unfinished, but open. She breathed in. Slow, steady, free. Because some battles end with victory. Some end with scars. And some end with understanding. Understanding that strength isn't the calm you show others. It's the storm you learn to walk through quietly, without asking anyone to notice. Emma turned away from the fence and headed back toward the hospital, her pace grounded, her heartbeat steady, her eyes clear. Tomorrow would bring something new. Someone injured. Someone scared. Someone who needed her hands more than she needed her sleep. And she would be there. Silent, steady, strong in ways the world rarely sees. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.